Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about screws. So, screws is something that's used to either pull something together or pull something apart, depending on how you use it. But most commonly, it's used to hold something together. So, when you purchase screws, there's different types you could get. There's like metric and inches to begin with. So, these are the two broad categories. And based on which one you choose, there's different conventions of how you read the sizes. So here you can actually see that, for example, if we're looking at like a 832 screw, right? So there's like screws that have in the English units, they have like number 6, 8, 10, and those usually correspond to some diameter size. So in this case, a 8 corresponds to a 0.164 inch diameter. And then the 32, what that means is 32 threads per inch. Okay, so that's just how they name their screws. And then you might see other sizes that actually have the diameter. So like a 1/4 inch dash 20 is a 1/4 inch diameter screw with 20 threads per inch. So that's for the English units. And then if you're looking at metric, right, if we have like a M4, that's just the diameter. So the M for metric and then the number after that will be the diameter. So if I order like a M4, for example, and then the way they do it is they'll have like a thread pitch, which is like the gap between the threads. So instead of how many threads in an inch, they go by pitch. So it's like pitch versus lead, pretty much. And then based on that, you'll know the size. So there's also actually there's this thing called the screw thread gauge. So sometimes if you have a screw just hanging around and you don't know the size, you could throw it onto this thing here, and you can figure out what screw you have by trying to fit it in all the possible holes. So when you order screws, you can see I type screws and there's like a million types of screws. So you might be thinking, like, oh, which screw do you need, right? I would say the most common ones you'll be using are uh, these sort of screws, the socket head screws. They're the most common types. And there's different types, obviously. You have the alloy steel socket heads, right? You have some super corrosion resistant stainless steel ones. But typically the ones I've found the best are like the black ones. So you type like socket head black alloy, like these right here, alloy steel sockets. I don't know why the model earlier was. It's hard to see the black, but you'll just see like black oxide alloy. These I found to be pretty good. The silver ones are okay. Um, so it depends on what you're doing. So you'll see there's like different head profiles. There's like these super low profile ones or like bigger profile ones. The low profile ones might be good if you're trying to save space, but the downside is that sometimes if you apply too much torque, you can actually start messing up the head. So you have to be careful how much torque you apply. And then they have like these button ones. These are really bad. I strip a lot of these heads before, so I would say if you don't need especially for the smaller screws, if you don't need a button head, try to stay away from it. And you have like the typical with the Phillips screw heads. You have those options as well. So you can see what type of application you need, and then there's like some torque screws. If you don't want like random people removing it, you might use these special heads. That way, you have to use a certain bit to remove it. Okay, so you can see there's a bunch of types out here. It's an endless catalog. They have like screws that have like shoulders here, which you don't need the whole thing to be threaded. You might have like part of it that's shouldered, which is not threaded. That's the term they use, shouldered. So there's a bunch of types out there, and we'll get into more details of that later. But you can see that we could take a look at how you would use this in an application. So, you could go ahead and so right now we're dealing with a M4, maybe this one's 8 millimeter. So we're gonna go ahead M4 by 0.7. So we're gonna go ahead and download this, put it in our screws folder. Okay, so this is our M4 screw. And the way you would use this appropriately, let's say we have a part and then we sketch on the top plane. And let's just make a quick plate. And let's just make this a little bit thicker because we're going to be threading into it. So you could go ahead and come here into Hole Wizard, and this one here is a hole option. But you want to choose the tap drill, or let's see, you have tap drill size, and then we're using metric. So we're using a 4 millimeter. Why did it jump to dowel? Okay, tap drill, and then you have a M4.7, right? So if you place the position, I'm just gonna put in the middle and hit OK. You can see that that's your hole for the screw. Okay, so I'm gonna call this plate and put it in my screw folder. So let's make a quick assembly. So I'm gonna put my plate and then also my screw. So if I want to just put this screw in here, you can see that I'm gonna mate this surface onto here. And let's do a quick cross-section view. So I want to show you how this looks like. So notice that when you create a hole for your screw, there's going to be some overlap, right? So typically what happens is you'll choose a drill bit size that corresponds to the right threads that you're trying to make. And then um, what you would do next is get the tapping tool, this thing here. So you might do it by hand or by machine, but you have a tapping tool that has the bit that will help you make your tap extension. So let's go to Google Images. So if I say like tapping tool, it'll look something like this. These things will help you make your threads. So you put it on one of those like hand bits if you're doing it by hand, and then it'll make the threads for you. So that's why initially you'll see the whole undersize, and then when you actually do make your threads, you have to like turn 2 down, 1 up, 2 down, 1 up, 2 steps down, 1 step up, just so you could remove the material. And then you might like spray some oil or something to make it. But in practice, like when you're designing, it's normal to see this sort of interference because when you actually make it, you'll be removing the parts, removing material. Okay. And if you need to look up the size, the great thing about SolidWorks is it'll figure out the correct hole size based on the screw you're using, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's how you work with screws in SolidWorks. And if you found this video helpful, give a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.